Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Welcome to In Her Voice, episode number 12. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am your host and guide as we talk with women of all walks of life about what it means to be guided by your inner voice, to live and listen to that inner place of wisdom. And I am so excited today to have my friend Tory Dube on the podcast today. You guys are just going to love her. She is so full of life and full of joy. I first met Tory in a mastermind group that we were in last year, and I immediately knew that she was someone that lived with joy every single day, and that she is absolutely unapologetic about being guided by her inner voice. Tory is a healthy living expert and holistic business consultant, and it's so cool to see how she uses a variety of things to really help her clients move forward in their life. She talks about nutrition, she talks about mindfulness, meditation, and movement, and all of these other things that really come together to create this holistic life experience for her clients. And so we really dig into a lot of topics today. One of the things that we start off with is this idea of creating a vocabulary for ourselves so that we're able to translate what our inner voice is telling us, what it has shown us in the past, even before we knew that language. We talk about how to reconnect to your joy through facing your fears. It sounds scary, but it's so cool. We talk about how nutrition, what we eat, can literally amplify our superpowers, our unique gifts that we were put here to serve with in this world. And most importantly, we talk about willingness, the willingness to listen, the willingness to be open to what our heart is telling us. So sit back and relax, or maybe you're doing dishes, or maybe you're driving your kids around to sports. Whatever you're doing right now, just have us in your ears, soak up the conversation, and enjoy. Welcome, Tory, to In Her Voice. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited as well.
Excellent. So I want to dive right in. And I was perusing your website, which I like to do for my guests before they come on. So I really get to know you even better. And there were so many surprising things on there. Like I thought I knew you. And then I was like, wait a minute, what's this? What's this? And so I made up a little timeline here. And I thought that maybe we could start with you talking a little bit about this timeline. And it looks like this: high school, college, New York City as a professional dancer, Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, Indianapolis.
I'm laughing just because I feel like there's decades to explain for each one of those.
Well, and I think what I'm getting at is I feel like when I just look at that briefly, I'm like, wow, these are all really different things. Mm-hmm. You know, business school, professional dancer, holistic healthcare provider. There's a lot of distance between those two things in addition to the time. And I was hoping that you could maybe take us through the process of what you had to do to figure it all out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that especially as a teenager and throughout high school and college in New York, like I didn't have any vocabulary to describe this. It's only me having the wisdom, having gone through it, to look back and make sense of it. So it felt like chaos in the moment, which I think most things do until you look back and you can see how everything connects. So I don't want to make you feel like I had this figured out in any way. But yeah, so high school to college, high school, always an overachiever, and loved being a leader, but also struggled with being like cripplingly introverted and trying to figure out what that felt like. Throughout high school, I always thought, okay, I'm going to do my best, and then I'm going to go to an amazing college, and then I'm going to get a really versatile degree in business, and then I can rule the world in whatever way I want. And that plan really fell to a halt when I graduated high school, and then realized I don't give a crap. Sorry, can we swear in here? I don't give a crap about business. And so I don't really want to move to another state and invest so much in an education that I'm not really sure that I want yet. So I kind of had a freak out a couple weeks before I was supposed to move to Boston and go to Boston University. And instead I chose to go to the University of New Hampshire, 3 miles away from my house, and do my business degree there because I had a full scholarship. So that was the first twist. And then, as I suspected all along, I did not like it whatsoever. So I lasted a year. And I mean, I did well. I got great grades, but internally, I wasn't feeling it. I had always been a dancer, and I was missing that look into humanity. And being a performer to me has always been about kind of coping with my own emotions through movement and through acting. And I just wasn't finding that in the classroom at business school. So I dropped out and I moved to New York City alone at 19. And my parents are just the most wonderful, supportive people. And they said, I don't understand at all, but you're obviously going through a moment here. And if you think this is what you need, then please go for it. So I applied to an internship. And interrupt me at any point, Kelly, if you have any questions.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, since you gave me the open door there,
please.
I want to go to what you said. You said, as I suspected,
mm-hmm.
And so can you talk to us about that? Because this is, I think, at the heart of what we're talking about here on In Her Voice, this idea that deep inside, we know what we need. We know Absolutely. What we want. So how did that come up for you? What did that feel like? How did you figure out that you were right all along?
And again, like I didn't have this language then. This is me using my now language to describe then. But at that point, it just kind of felt like a stomachache. And I knew what joy felt like. I mean, I knew what performing felt like and just how ecstatic and creative and innovative and connected I was. And I always describe it as feeling like I stuck the landing. So I was a gymnast, and it feels so good when you vault and then you stick the landing with both feet. And that's kind of what I was always searching for in everything that I did. And that at the time, it kind of felt like torture because I was following all of these little streams of paths that seemed really random, but that was my guidance system. So at 19 years old, when I just felt like, oh, okay, I really don't like this. I just feel like I'm living next to my body. I'm desperate to find something else. And this dance opportunity popped up, and I just thought, okay, I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's different than this, and it feels a bit closer to home. I don't know. So I just went for it and hoped that it was going to work out.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you talk about your then voice and your now voice, because I think that that's a really important distinction for people to recognize, is that when you're first starting in this journey, or even when you've been doing it for a while, sometimes the inner voice gets lost in translation. So we hear it, we feel it, but we don't know how to put our then voice, our then thoughts onto it. And so it's confusing. And I think that that's where it really comes to this place of having to recognize how certain things feel inside of yourself. Like you said, that you felt like you were living next to your body. You didn't feel that joy. You didn't feel like, yes, I stuck it. So those kinds of things, and starting to make those relationships, is how we get really clear on what is working and what isn't working.
Yeah. And full disclosure, I grew up suffering with an eating disorder, and it looked different year to year. And each kind of rebirth of it I felt I could trick myself and say like, okay, well, it's not as bad as it used to be, but still it was disordered eating. I was eating for the wrong reasons, whether it was I was eating too much, eating too little, or just not eating to nourish my body. And that distraction really pulled me away from that inner joy, from that inner voice. It was a lot louder than my intuition. And so I know that I know now. At the time I didn't have this language, but I know now that that's what really was my discomfort, was using all of my energy and my love and my Toriness to focus on hiding this pain instead of healing it so I could get back to my inner voice. But I would have these little spurts of intuition where my intuition could kind of sneak through that noise, and I would hear it and I would go, okay, that's what it feels like. And I would remember that feels so good. And then those little moments would be what led me to the next big thing in search of hopefully maintaining that joy. So that little spout of inspiration said, go to New York City, grow up, dance, and see what happens. So that's how I ended up in New York City at 19.
Well, and so what happened?
So I accepted an internship with Broadway Dance Center, and it was supposed to be just one semester. And I kind of had this backup plan where I switched my major at UNH to theater and dance, so I could use my internship if I wanted, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I did the 25 weeks. And then a teacher asked me if I wanted to stay in New York and assist him. So I stayed for another 2 years, assisting him, dancing professionally in the city, which led to doing theater and doing TV and film and doing commercial work. And then I did stand-up comedy.
What?
Yeah. All of which, I mean, really, they all were an attempt to just reconnect to my joy. So stand-up comedy, for example, I was terrified of public speaking, and I don't like that feeling of fear. I don't like that discomfort. So instead of avoiding it, I thought I want to fix this. I want to heal it. So I signed up for a stand-up comedy class, and the graduation is you have to do a show. So I did the show, and I was like, okay, I can do this. That still felt really hard and terrifying. I think I need to do a couple more shows so I can get over this. And that led into doing stand-up comedy for a year in attempts to heal my discomfort for public speaking.
Do you feel like it worked?
It helped. I still think it's something I'll potentially always struggle with, but it definitely helped a lot. Mm-hmm. And now I can look back and go, but I did that, which just feels empowering.
Totally. Well, and so I think that we just need to pause right here and ask you to tell us a joke.
No. Okay. So I get to say that I didn't actually tell jokes. It was more storytelling. So,
okay.
It was more just like really ridiculous storytelling.
So we don't get to hear any of it.
You don't. And I almost even offered to send a YouTube video, but I can't even do that. I don't even know if I can do that.
Well, I'll forgive you.
I need to come up with a joke though, just like in my pocket, because this comes up every single time somebody hears that I've done stand up.
For sure. Well, so you talk a lot about healing. You healed, or you tried to begin the healing process of your fear of public speaking by doing that thing that made you scared. Mm-hmm. You were working on healing your eating disorder by finding the things that were bringing you joy. How did that progress for you? How did your healing finally get to a place where you understood what it was that you needed to do?
I still think that I'm figuring it out. But I kind of see every healer, artist, musician, mentor, coach, teacher, I feel like we're all aiming for the same thing. We're trying to guide people back to that place within them that is just perfect. I mean, you talk about this all the time. You're born perfect. You're just like this ball of love with all the tools you need to succeed within you. And we forget that along the way. And so I see your work as you're leading people back to that. And you use empowerment and self-esteem and finding your voice to do that. And then I use nutrition and movement and positive psychology to do that. And I think really I was searching for that the whole time through dance, through acting, through nonprofit work. I was searching to get back to that. And I think I've really only settled on working with nutrition and positive psychology and movement now because I've found a formula that works, but I'm not really sure I've settled and I've completely figured it out. The only part I figured it out is that that's what we're all searching for.
one thing that I want to point out is that sometimes I feel like when we begin this journey and we make that commitment to ourselves that says, I'm going to align with my true authentic being. Like I'm going to be aligned with my soul. I'm going to listen to that voice. And then when we do that, we expect it to be like a lightning bolt. And then all of a sudden we know. And I like that you're highlighting the fact that it's definitely a journey and it's changing. And I think that being unattached to what it's going to look like day by day or week by week or year by year is actually really empowering, and it opens us up to receive so much more than we would be able to receive if we felt like things had to look a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you went to school to become a holistic nutrition counselor. I don't think I have the title right, but
that is okay. It's the title is actually Mind Body Transformational Psychologist, which I never say. I know that sounds really ridiculous. I think the technical term is holistic nutrition practitioner.
And then you started doing this work. And what have you discovered about yourself as you do this work with other people?
I'm learning every day, always. But I originally decided to go back to school because I have always been a helper and a lover, and I had tried it through many other avenues and just, again, I hadn't stuck the landing yet. And I thought, okay, well, I'm really interested in nutrition, probably because I have a lot of nutrition baggage from my eating disorder for the past decade. And so I just kind of signed up on a whim. I thought about it for a week and said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I was annoyed at first that we had to also have the hypnotherapy and the life coaching piece. I was like, no, I just want to know about food so I can eat the perfect foods and I can be perfect. And so I started school with the best intentions and didn't even really realize that I needed the school for myself so much. So those 3 years, it was a lot of therapy for me. And then I graduate and I think, okay, well, now I've got a handle on it. And I do in many ways. But then I'll have a client that helps me see new parts of me that I didn't know I had through their story, and vice versa. Parts of me allow them to see what they're struggling in different words than the dialogue that's just constantly running through their head.
I think that that's so beautiful and so powerful. And I think that again, it highlights this idea that we're always evolving. We're always learning about who we are. And there's always something new waiting for us to discover about our authentic self and about our voice and about what that voice tells us.
Absolutely. I really think it comes down to just having a commitment to a high standard for living. And I mean, that doesn't mean that there won't be obstacles and you won't have trauma and you won't go through these really painful things in life. It's just more acknowledging that you have a choice in how you want to approach those things. And I have a high standard of how I want to approach those things.
Let's talk about that. The high standard. What that brings up in my mind is this idea of perfect. And you talked about that when you went to school.
Yeah.
You wanted to learn how to be perfect. So how do you separate out living by that high standard and perfectionism?
Absolutely. Well, I think the first thing is redefining our metrics of success. And I talk about this all the time. And my metrics used to be, did I count my calories and did I hit the count? Did I exercise? Did I not say the wrong thing? Was I acknowledged for being awesome at something? Which, I mean, I pretty much set myself up for failure most days because those are really hard to achieve every day. So instead, I've changed my metrics of success, and I encourage anybody I work with or anybody in my life to do the same and to change them to things that actually matter, that are aligned with my values, that are aligned with my soul. Like, did I stand up for myself? Did I stand up for people that I love and I care about? Did I use my authentic voice? Did I make nourishing choices? Did I forgive myself? Can I forgive myself if I didn't make a nourishing choice? And can I just brush it off and realize that there's a new beginning in every moment, right? Those are so much more digestible than trying to attain the old metrics. So that's the first piece. And then the second piece is, I think, high standards because of perfectionism. Maybe that's not the right term to use, but I have a commitment to myself to not drag myself through the mud up to my neck when I don't have to, I feel pain, I'm sad, and I allow myself to process it. But there's a choice, like I could wallow in this pain for the next month, or I could say, okay, I'm embarrassed. That one kind of hurt. I'm going to allow myself today to mourn it, and then I'm going to shake it off, and I'm going to reach in my toolbox and use the tools that I know help me bring my life back to joy. And I'm committed to doing that. Does that make more sense?
Totally. Yeah. And I just kind of wanted to tweak that out, because I think that as women, and the women who are listening to this podcast, they're smart, they're driven, they're motivated. We're not talking about lazy people here.
Totally.
We're talking about people who do live by that high standard, but sometimes it's such a high standard. And the standards, like you said, they're not focused on the things that matter. So when you talk about redefining your metrics of success, and I love that, what were some of the practices that you did to really figure out what was important to you? How did you figure that out?
I've found for myself, and this is a tool that I use with clients as well, is I call it this 3-part little cycle that's infinite. So first we have to be willing. Then we have to build awareness. And then with that awareness, with that data, we make an empowered choice. And so, of course, I didn't have that language when I was going through it, but I found for myself that having awareness around it really, really helps me to digest it better. So I write everything down in my journal. My journal is like my Bible. It's like my recipe guide, my dictionary, my thesaurus. It's everything. So for me, I really had to get familiar with what my internal dialogue even was, because for most of us, it's just habitual. We don't even know. It's subconscious. It's like we don't even hear the words. We're just affected by the toxicity of it. So I forced myself every morning and every night, and I still do often, to write down really identify what the pain is. So then I can look at it and laugh at it sometimes and go, okay, I can probably make a more empowered choice about that internal dialogue. And then the hard part is actually making the choice. Again, that commitment and saying, do I want to feel something new? Then I need to try something new and just change how I speak to myself.
And I think that that's huge. I mean, when we're talking about voice, all of us are really familiar with that inner mean girl.
Yeah.
We know that she's there all of the time, but it does get so noisy up there that we don't realize we're listening to it, that we don't realize we're living our lives bowing down to that voice instead of the voice that's really going to show us who we are, the essence of who we are. Like you said, your Toriness. And that inner mean girl is never going to allow that to even come out.
Absolutely. And I think raising the stakes a bit, and that's probably my perfectionism speaking, but raising the stakes a bit for me really allows me to honor it even more. So a holistic practitioner, I'm constantly talking about treating our body as an ecosystem, that everything is intricately connected. I mean, think how brilliant our bodies are, our cells working in such specific, insanely amazing communication without our input. Like we're not telling our lungs to breathe. We're not telling our heart to beat. We're not telling our blood to flush toxins, right? But how powerful could it be if we used our conscious voice to influence that too? We say, your body, you're strong and you're healthy and you're beautiful, versus continually telling our body, you're fat, you're ugly, you're sick, you're tired. Because that internal dialogue, that's energy. Everything is energy. And that energy is definitely communicating with all of the cells in our body. And we're just creating this fight upstream, where instead we could go with the flow more and encourage instead. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. Well, and so do you have a practice of saying these things to yourself out loud, or do you write them down? I mean, how did you get to a place where that becomes your default language as opposed to beating yourself up all the time?
It's definitely practice. And every morning I refuse to put anything out into the world, whether it be a text message to my mom, my boyfriend, anything with social media, newsletter. I refuse to put anything out into the world until I've filled my love tanks. And I think that term came from The 5 Languages of Love, that wonderful book. He speaks of love tanks, but I filled my own love tanks, and I do that through prayer, meditation. There's no set way I have to do it. I just go to my little designated sacred spot. It's a little tiny rug on the floor with a little meditation pillow, and it just feels sacred over there. And it kind of feels cleansing and like a confirmation that I'm ready to start the day. And I just take a couple minutes over there before I start anything. And sometimes I need to spend like 2 or 3 hours over there or reading a book that inspires me, or moving or exercising or chanting out loud, whatever it may be, to make sure that my love tanks are full before I move forward, because I know that whatever else I'm going to do later, it's going to feel really icky if I'm not complete in myself first.
I love that. What a great image. I can just imagine like oxygen tanks that you wear in your back that you just have to refill them every day.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part of that is that the reason that they get empty is also because that love is flowing out of you. And it's affecting the people that are around you, and it's creating connection, and it's flowing into you as well. That's beautiful. Thank you, Tory.
Oh, my pleasure.
You mentioned about your passion when it comes to nutrition. And I was browsing around on your blog, and one of the blog articles caught my eye, and it's how to find your magic through food. I love this idea of magic. I really believe we all have superpowers, but I'm really interested to hear how we can sort of have a very physical practice of eating that's going to magnify that.
So when I first started my nutrition practice, it was very fear-based. And it was like, don't eat the pesticides and don't eat sugar. And what I realized is I was just spreading more toxicity out into the world. And that is absolutely not what I want to do. So now a lot of my focus around food is what I call gentle nutrition, which is like we just really set the basics, because some people haven't been exposed to the basics. Their parents didn't know the basics. So that information was not transferred to them. So really simple nutrition stuff that doesn't psych you out. And then the biggest piece is just reconnecting with your food intuition and learning how to listen to your body. And so that article about using food to reconnect to your magic, it's using this really literal formula we have with food of I eat this, my body metabolizes it, it makes me feel a certain way, and then how I feel in my body guides how I show up in the world. So we understand that formula with food, right? I eat something, makes me feel a certain way, then how I feel determines how I show up in the world. And if I eat a cupcake, I'm going to digest that and feel a lot different than if I eat like a really nourishing avocado chia pudding, right? So we understand that with food. We don't fully always acknowledge or understand that with everything else we're ingesting. So we metabolize everything we come in contact to. So that's the books we read, the news we watch before we leave for work, social media, the conversations we have, the community we keep, the friendships we honor. All of those things provide nourishment, good or bad, and we ingest it and we metabolize it, and it changes our reality moving forward. And so an easy example would be, say I watch a news piece that just devastates me and breaks my heart before I leave for the day. That's going to change my reality for my drive to work, and then my conversations at work, and then potentially my ability to show up at a conference at work. Whereas I could instead use that time to maybe sit in my sacred little corner and meditate and say some prayers and just like fill my love tanks, which will completely change the reality of my morning and how I show up in my day. Does that make sense?
Totally. It makes complete sense. And I like how you're broadening this idea of what we're digesting. And I think especially with social media, it's we talk all the time about, like you said, like taking out GMOs and sugar, like all of these evil, quote unquote, evil things that are in our food. But like, have you thought about maybe what you need to take a diet from in your social media? When you scroll through Instagram, what are the images that you, like you said, you're digesting? Are you seeing photo after photo of women who are objectifying themselves by saying that they have to look a certain way or whatever? And I think that when you really take a good hard look at what you need to clear out, that creates a lot more space for the things that you want to welcome in.
And going back to that inner voice, all of that toxicity that most of us are ingesting accidentally, we're not even understanding how much it affects us. You think I'm ever going to get my dad to stop watching Discovery ID murder movies before he goes to bed and then wondering why he can't sleep at night? I mean, he's just not willing to investigate it, but all of that serves as noise. That's the noise that's keeping us from that inner voice. So when we clean it up and we just have intentionality around it, there's so much space to really hear your soul and follow that soul to your ultimate joy and success and abundance and health and all of the things that we're seeking.
How do you get to a place where you can trust it? I talk about that a lot on this show and with my clients and with other women that I'm speaking to, this idea of how do I trust it? How do I build up that trust to know it's not going to take me in the wrong direction?
I feel like I've never had a wrong direction. If my intuition said something and I follow it, and I allow myself to step into it with both feet and really dive into the situation with authenticity and enthusiasm, I mean, I've never felt like I've made a wrong decision. Unless it's blatantly wrong, like something that's a really fear-based decision, like hurting yourself or anything that promotes a big disconnection. Maybe that could be it. Maybe it's if it provides a deeper connection to you, your love for yourself, honoring you and your soul's mission and your journey, then most likely it's a good decision. Whereas if it's providing disconnection, like eating that full chocolate cake or drinking a full bottle of wine alone or hurting yourself or doing something dangerous, that's providing disconnection. It's a fear-based choice and it's probably not going to be a good choice.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it goes back to your idea that you share of moving from being fear-fueled to love-fueled. Mm-hmm. Right? So that, I think that's such a beautiful example. And, you're talking about big things that are hurtful, but there are also small things. That, bowing down to this idea that we have to be perfect, that we need to be everything to all people, that we have to be loved by everyone, that we have to, fit in with every person that we're in. Those are also fear-based decisions, and they're hurtful to our soul.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, the heart of what we're talking about is how do you honor your Toriness, my Kellyness? How do we honor exactly who we are inside and do that in an unapologetic way?
I think it will be a forever journey, and it gets easier in little parts. And then you kind of elevate to a new level where you learn more. And something that I say all the time is this is the fun stuff. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm challenged with something in my business or in my life, and fortunately and unfortunately, I've taught my boyfriend also this is the fun stuff. So he will be the first one to be like, hey, Tori, but isn't this the fun stuff when I'm complaining about something? But just this idea that I think our souls came to this planet to be enrolled in Earth School. And anytime I have an obstacle and it's kind of hard to digest, I say, okay, but I'm learning because this is the fun stuff. And I kind of pulling the lens back always helps for me. Pulling the lens back and going, okay, this is just a speck of dust in my full journey and it's hurting me now, but I'm going to get through it. And then I'm going to have learned more and my soul's going to be a little bit stronger on the other side.
Yeah. What a great perspective. It just totally shifts that perspective of whatever problems that you have right now to say, this is how I'm growing. This is how I'm learning. This is the fun stuff. I'm going to start saying that.
Please do. I have patterns that come up in my life and I'll say, okay, do I want to get over this now? Or do I want to bring it with me in my next soul's journey and have to get over it that time? And I'm like, I think I'll do it now.
Right. It's much easier just to let things go when they're happening than to hold on to them because you can guarantee that it will come back to bite you in the butt.
Absolutely.
Every single time. So I have a couple of quickies for you. Who do you feel has been your best teacher? The person or book or author or whatever that you really feel like helped you understand what it meant to listen to your inner voice?
There's been so many evolutions of that. But my latest one was Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. There was just one little line in there that sticks with me every single day. And I'm paraphrasing, but she essentially said, don't create and exist for me. Like, don't be creating to help anybody else in the world. Just create and exist to heal yourself. And then that's the right answer. So when I have like this paralysis of like, what do I do? Where do I go? What do I create? What blog post do I write? What class do I make next? I just can take a deep breath and bring it back into me and go, okay, well, where can I create from my authentic voice? And then I can just put it out in the world and trust that I'm going to find my tribe that way.
Yeah, that's good. And I also highly recommend Big Magic.
Yes,
even if I think some people might look at that book and think, well, but I'm not creative. I'm not an author or an artist. And what I say to all of you who are listening is you're creating every single day.
Absolutely.
You're creating your life. And what more beautiful, important thing can you be creating? And there's definitely so many great nuggets in there. And then you talked a little bit about your practices, your morning sacred spot, and sometimes you include movement in that. But is there anything else that helps you sort of throughout the day, maybe like a little mini break or things like that, practices that really pull you back to that inner voice?
Using food is big for me because I really feel that our relationship to food sets the foundation for our relationship to ourselves in every other respect. So like if we have the excuse that we don't have time to adequately nourish our body machine, then how are you going to have time to adequately nourish yourself with more vague ideas? So I call these conscious living rituals, and they're just like little blips throughout the day where I consciously go, I'm going to do this thing for myself that's going to be positive and it's going to nourish me. So like preparing a healthy meal is a conscious living ritual. And then sitting down to eat the nourishing meal without scrolling through Instagram and giving myself a panic attack about my number of followers or comparing myself to other people, just like sitting in peace and enjoying the nourishing meal. And I don't have a timer set up for these conscious living rituals. It's all that awareness piece, like understanding like, okay, I feel a little bit outside of my body right now. Like, what can I do to reconnect? And then it's digging into your toolbox and saying, okay, these are the things that I know that I've tried before, that I've tested, that maybe I should try for the first time and see if it works. Reach into the toolbox and pull out something that maybe could help. And maybe it's dancing for a minute or blasting some music or going outside and just taking a walk around the building or opening the window or hugging my plants, whatever it is, and just committing to reconnecting. Because like you said, we are creators. We're conscious creators of our reality. And I have a commitment to my reality just feeling really yummy because I know that's available to me.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And those are so easy. Those things are easy. How easy is it to open a window and to breathe in the fresh air from outside? How easy is it to play a couple of ball tosses with your dog or whatever it is that will bring you joy or will like bring you back into the moment. Mm-hmm. So I hope that you guys take note of that and try to, maybe even make a little list of these things that you could do that take 1 minute, 30 seconds that can just bring you back into that place where you're connected with you.
Yeah. And acknowledging that the hard part is not the thing, right? The hard part is deciding to get from stinky mode to happy mode, which can sometimes feel like you're pushing like a boulder up the mountain. We've been so angry at someone before, and the thought of actually getting ourselves to a place of forgiveness, that's like almost painful, shifting that energy, But the thing is that once you get the boulder moving, it's just going to take little taps to keep you there. So acknowledging that the hardest part is the willingness piece, right? Remember that cycle, the willingness and then awareness around what we really feel and then making an empowered choice. The willingness to actually make the choice is the hard part. And then implementing the tool is the fun part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally. Well, and I think the theme that's coming out of this is you have to be willing. Mm-hmm. You have to give yourself permission to want it. And I think that is a process. And like you said, we're always doing it. Like, it's not like, okay, today I decide I'm going to be willing and then I'm done. No, we do it every day, every moment. We're making that decision over and over and over again. And that's where really the power comes from. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Tory. I really appreciate all of your wisdom. And I want to have you let our listeners know how to find you. How can they connect with you on internet, on social media, all that fun stuff?
Oh, yay. Well, my website is torydube.com, TORYDUBE.com. And there you will find many free resources. So please check them out. You'll find them under Laboratory Tuesday. And you'll also find that I'm hosting a retreat in Mexico next March, which will be really yummy. Lots of healthy living rituals and yoga and organic farming. That will be a blast. And then on Instagram, you can find me at Tory Dubes, TORYDOOBS, and same for my Facebook page.
And I'll link to all of that stuff at kellycovert.com. So if you guys are driving or whatever, you can't remember, all of the links will be right there on the podcast page. So you can find all of that good stuff. Thank you. Tory, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and honor you, your beautiful spirit, your joy, your zest. Like you're someone that I would call zesty. That's just a word that I apply to people who I see their joy coming out all of the time. And thank you for sharing that zestiness with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining our conversation today. It has been so great to have you here, and I really hope that you are able to soak in Tory's wisdom and understand what you need to start doing to find that willingness to take the action. What are your conscious living rituals going to look like? There's just really so much in this interview today that you can put into action right now. And sometimes you might need extra support for that. You may have questions. You may want to continue our conversation outside of the podcast. And so I really want to encourage you to join the Worthy Collective. What's the Worthy Collective? The Worthy Collective is my community of women who are stepping into their worthiness each and every day, right now. Not if or when, but now. And this is a place where you can connect with women who know what it's like to do this work, who've been there, who are practicing it every single day. And I would love to invite you in to join me and join all of the amazing women in this group. You would be the perfect fit. I just know it. So maybe you're running the kids around right now or whatever, but tonight, before you go to bed, when you're about to plug your phone in for the night, just head on over to kellycovert.com/worthy and you can request to join. It's free and I'd love to have you. As always, I want to remind you that you matter. We need you showing up in this world, stepping into your unique gifts and qualities. You are worthy.